Hey, what's up, YouTube? How you guys doing? As usual, long time. Actually, it hasn't been that long, I don't think. But yeah, so this is a video that I've been wanting to put out for quite some time. It's not a fragrance review, but what it is a buyer beware video. A buyer beware video. I've been wanting to put this one out for a couple of months now, but I just kind of let things get in the way. But here I am now with a fragrance buyer beware video, and surprisingly, I haven't seen any videos like this on YouTube thus far. But this is a very necessary video, and it's mandatory. It is imperative that if you are a new fragrance, a collector or aficionado or whatever, if you're trying to get into collecting fragrances, you have to watch this video from front to back, okay? And let me tell you why. Um, I'm almost disgusted with what I've seen at some of these fragrance shops. Now, I'm not talking about the department stores. I'm not talking about like the Macy's or the Sephora's or places like that. What I'm talking about is like you may go to a mall and you may see like a fragrance shop. It'll be like Fragrance Depot or like whatever it is. And what they'll have is they'll have a bunch of fragrances on the counter. They'll have like fragrances like on the shelves, but then like a few select fragrances on the counter. Now, typically, these are fragrances that you have never heard of. Never heard of. I've been collecting and into fragrances for several years now, and these fragrances I've never heard of. Okay, but the bottles are fancy. The presentation is good, and typically the fragrances actually smell okay, but you never heard of them. But when you walk into the store and they ask you like, do you need any assistance, and you may say, well, yeah, I'm looking for something new or I'm looking for something nice or whatever the case. Now, instead of them showing you fragrances that you have heard of, like the Calvin Kleins or the Versace's or the Prados or whatever the case, instead of showing you fragrances that have some reputation and fragrances that you have heard about, they show you these unknown fragrances, and that's all they show you. They never show you a designer, well-known fragrance with a reputation. And I became firstly puzzled by this, because it was starting to become a habit. I would go into these places and they would only show me these fragrances, and um, what I realized was this is a little bit more than coincidence. On some level, they must be getting some type of profit off of pushing these fragrances and selling these fragrances versus the other fragrances that they have in stock, the designer fragrances. And to be honest with you, I actually got caught. I mean, they got me. I got. Okay, long time fragrance connoisseur, aficionado, whatever you want to call me or whatever I want to call myself. They actually got me, and this was because, to be honest with you, I had a couple extra dollars in my pockets, and I was itching to buy a fragrance. So I went out to one of these shops, and I saw this fragrance. It's called Thallium. This is one that they will push on you when you go to these stores. Thallium, they have like a newer one, Thallium Black. They will definitely push percent on you. Okay, it smells like crap, but they'll push it on you and convince you that it's good. Um, but with Thallium, I tried it. I thought it was okay, and they were kind of like really selling it to me, so I ended up buying it for $45. It was they said it was like 54.99 or something like that. They gave me like $10 off. So I'm thinking like, okay, I got a little deal here. That's how much like a typical fragrance costs at say Macy's or whatever the case. So let me go ahead and buy it, right? I get home, right? And here's the thing. That is not what you want to do. But I'll just finish the story. I get home, I get on Google, I type in thallium, I do a long search. Finally, I find it on eBay, right? How much are they selling it for? About $10 to $20. $20 max. Okay, I paid $45 for it, but I saw it for the most part for about 10 to 15. Here and there, I saw it for closer to 20. Okay, so let's say it goes for 15. I bought it for $45. Okay, so they sold me that fragrance for 300% more than what I could have bought the fragrance for online. Okay, that's about a 200% profit. Okay, that's not smart. That's not being a smart consumer. Um, buyer beware. Buyer beware is the whole point of this video. Buyer beware. How I typically go about buying fragrances is if I smell something that I like at a store, at a Sephora's or a Macy's or a reputable department store, I'll write down the name, I'll go online, and I'll research it. I'll research it for consumer opinions and reviews. I want to know what the longevity is. I want to know what the general consensus of the fragrance is. Do a lot of people like it? Does it, does it last long? Did you like it at first, but then it grew, you grew bored of it? When do you wear it? In the evening, daytime, whatever. I just want to, get an idea of how others find the fragrance and what prices they are getting this fragrance for. Okay, I usually do a search online, and I usually get like the bottom barrel price for all of my fragrances. Okay, usually even if you go to a department store, Sephora's, you may spend $45 to $65 on a fragrance. Usually you can get it online for $20 to $30 less. On average, you can get it for I'll say $15 to $30 less online than what you'll spend in the stores. So that's how I normally go about fragrance shopping. And of course, Base Notes. I'll always go to Base Notes for to see the fragrance reviews. Okay, and so this is what I normally do. But this time I was kind of itching. I had the itch. I had the itch. I had the buyer itch. So I went ahead and bought this fragrance unwisely, and I did regret it. I gave it to my dad. Eventually, I tried to take it back, but because I had already opened it and everything like that, they wouldn't accept it. But I want you guys to know that when you go to these places, typically the integrity is absolutely none. Zilch. They have no integrity. And of course, like, they're a business. Their bottom line is to make a sale and to make profit. So your best interest is not at hand. So, and in fact, what happened was the last time I went to one of these places, actually in one day I went to 3 of these places, and the exact same thing happened in every store. In fact, the last one I went into, I walked in and I said, "Do you guys have anything good?" And they showed, and they were walking right towards the thallium, and I just walked out. I just kissed my teeth and walked out. I was fed up. And they're like, "What? What's the problem? I was like, "I'll tell you what the problem is," and I let them know. I said, "Why is it that I come into these stores and you guys only show me the same fragrances?" And you know what? They knew what was up. They knew what I was talking about, and so they kind of like, have a nice day. And I was like, "Yeah, you have a nice day too." I just got worked up a little bit, didn't I? Right? But this is what they do. This is what they do. And as a consumer, sometimes it's like, because you'll see others who are less informed than you, and you see them making these huge purchases, and you know that they are getting ripped off in such a, they get ripped off. And as a consumer, sometimes it's hard to sit there and watch. On that day that I went into those 3 shops, I saw a guy. I think he had 2 fragrances, and at the checkout, I heard the total, like, it was maybe like 129 or something crazy like that. And his wife, because she was helping him pick out the fragrances, and I whispered to his wife as he was at the checkout. I said, make sure he holds on to the receipt and do a search online, please, and see how much you can get this for online. And so she and I got into a whole dialogue, and it was to the point where one of the sales associates heard me, and she came over and she's like, is there something I can help you with? And I said, no, I'm fine. And so she was kind of, being that she overheard some of the conversation I was having with the lady, she started to ask me, well, so I mean, so what is going on? You're trying to, dissuade my customers from making purchases. And so she and I had a whole conversation and slight, almost debate on the practices that I've noticed at these stores. And so she's like, what are you, a reporter, or like what's that? I'm like, I'm not a reporter, but I'm an experienced fragrance aficionado. You know, and furthermore, because here's the thing. When you come in there and they ask you, do you need some assistance? The assumption is that you are an ignorant consumer. That's what the assumption is. So if you go in there acting ignorant, they will treat you as such. Okay, you go in there because I said to them, because the lady says to me, well, you asked me what was good and what do you recommend. So I showed you what we recommend. I said, okay, you showed me what you recommend. However, you didn't show me any Calvin Kleins, you didn't show me any Gucci's, you showed me no Versace, nothing from Hermes, Cartier, nothing from a reputable designer. Why is that? And she said, well, that's not what you asked. You asked me what I recommend. I said, okay, so because you thought that I was ignorant, because you thought that I didn't know about these better fragrances, you went and showed me some, no-name fragrances basically that I've never heard of. Had you known, first of all, had you known that I was a reporter, as you called it, had you known I was a reporter, had you known that I was an informed consumer on fragrances, and I asked you what would you recommend, would you still show me these no-name fragrances, or would you show me the designer fragrances? And I stumped her a little bit. I mean, she kind of thought about it, and I mean, and she didn't come out and say, she didn't exactly cop to what it is that they're doing, but she pretty much said, I mean, she said maybe I would have shown you some other things in addition to what I have been showing, which is their no-name stuff, and it's like obviously you would have, and so I was really furious that day. And I as a consumer, naturally, it makes you realize how dishonest people are, and how little integrity folks have. Now, at the same token, as a consumer, I'm a little wrong sometimes for going into a store like Sephora's or Macy's, knowing that I'm not going to buy anything from these stores, but I'm just going to try, what's out there and then purchase online. I mean, maybe 90% or more of my fragrances have been purchased online, but I'll go to a Macy's or Lord and Taylor's and I'll try their fragrances there, but I'll buy somewhere else. So maybe as a consumer I'm wrong on that end, but at the same time, consumers, we have to look out for consumers. So that's what this video is all about. So let me just make sure I covered everything I want to cover. Research. It is very important that you research. Do not impulse buy. You may find a fragrance that smells like out of this world divine and you think the price is reasonable. You may find it cheaper online. Okay, do your research online. See how much you can get it from an online vendor and make your decision from there. Okay, definitely check out basenotes.net. There are other fragrance websites, Makeup Alley and like a few others, but I'm a longtime member of Base Notes, big fan of the site, and there's a lot of information out there in terms of purchasing, lots of reviews. So definitely check out Base Notes. Okay, Macy's. Macy's is a good place to go, I guess, to buy fragrances, but sometimes they have vendors there who sell specific scents or specific designers. You may have like a Calvin Klein vendor, so you may see what looks like a Macy's associate, and so you're thinking, oh, this person is not biased, so you may ask them, like, hey, so what's new? And they're like, well, this Calvin Klein one here, and this Calvin Klein one here too, and this one, this is pretty nice. They're only pushing certain fragrances, so it's important to ask them, by the way, are you a vendor? And sometimes they'll say, yes, I am a vendor, and they'll tell you what designer fragrances or what designer houses they are selling. So naturally they are biased. Sometimes you'll get an honest one who they sell certain fragrances, but they'll tell you, but you know what, to be honest, I also like this fragrance for men, or I also like this, or I also like this too, even though I don't sell that. So, but for the most part, you want to talk to a Macy's associate or an associate from the store, not a vendor who has ulterior motives. Okay. Um, so let's see. Did I cover everything? Did I cover everything? Oh, Sephora's, by the way. Sephora's is a great place to. I love Sephora. I love the people at Sephora's. They are always very kind, very courteous, and very willing to assist you. They're not biased. They get absolutely nothing out of uh, recommending one fragrance over another. They're always very generous with samples. So I definitely recommend Sephora's as a great place to sample fragrances and to purchase. Also, there's LuckyScent.com. Um, what's the other one that I go to all the time? Uh, I don't know why it's not coming to me, but pardon me, I haven't been to that site in a while. But it is one of my favorites. But anyways, I just wanted to warn you guys. This is especially for the newbies, the new fragrance collectors. Okay, some of the old heads, I'm sure they've been through this. They've noticed these practices. So this is more so for the new heads. Okay, beware. All right, when you go to these places, make sure you're getting an unbiased opinion. Okay, and make sure you do your research. Okay. Alright, this was a 16-minute video, a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but I hope some of this is useful to you guys, okay? Stay tuned for another video. Next video is on my current favorite fragrances, okay? These are some fragrances that I've sampled recently and that I thoroughly enjoy, alright? Alright, you guys, thank you for tuning in. Bye.